So we are about to dive into what is easily one of the most intense, action-packed chapters in all of the prophets. Seriously, it reads like a thriller, and we're going to break down exactly what happens, step by step, verse by verse.
Welcome to the Partardez channel. Today, we explain Prophets Kings 2, chapter 9 in a clear and simple way, step by step.
We're going to follow the literal text right in order. Here's our roadmap for today. Context in the anointing, Jehu's ride and the kings, the fate of Jezebel, some clarifications and ideas, and finally, lessons and recap. Let's get right to it.
Moving to Section 1, Context and the Anointing. Before the action really kicks off, we have to know where our key players are on the map.
Okay, so check out this geographic and political setup because it's absolutely crucial for understanding what goes down. On one side, we've got the Israelite army. They are actively deployed, guarding the city of Ramoth-Gilead against the king of Aram. But here's the catch. Their commander-in-chief, King Joram of Israel, is nowhere near the front line. He's actually miles away in a city called Jezreel, recovering from some battle wounds. And while he's laid up there, he's got a royal visitor. King Ahaziah of Judah has come down just to check on him. So picture this. You've got the two kings completely isolated in Jezreel, totally cut off from the main military force stationed back in Ramoth-Gilead. This split is the perfect powder keg for what's about to happen.
Right in the opening verses, the prophet Elijah sets things in motion, and it is urgent. He gives a young prophet from the company of prophets some incredibly specific, rapid-fire instructions. He basically says, all right, tuck your cloak into your belt, so you don't trip because you're going to need to move fast. Grab this flask of oil and head straight to the army at Ramoth-Gilead. Once you're there, find a military commander named Jehu. Get him completely alone in an inner, private room, pour the oil on his head and declare, I anoint you king over Israel. And the best part? Elisha tells him, once you say that, open the door and run. Literally just run. Do not wait around.
Well, the young prophet follows the orders to a T. He gets to the camp, finds the army officers all sitting together, and calls Jehu inside. He pours the oil on Jehu's head, but he doesn't just hand him a crown and say congratulations. He drops a massive, heavy decree. This young prophet lays out Jehu's divine mission. Jehu is commanded to completely wipe out the royal house of his master, Ahab, and he tells him exactly why. It's because the Lord is avenging the blood of the prophets and all the servants who were violently murdered by Ahab's wife, Jezebel. The decree leaves no wiggle room. Every last male of Ahab's line has to go. And as for Jezebel herself, the prophecy says she will be devoured by dogs on a specific plot of ground in Jezreel. Then, boom, just like Elisha commanded, the young prophet swings the door open and sprints away.
So Jehu walks back outside to his fellow officers, and they're looking at him like, what just happened? They ask, is everything all right? Why did this madman come to you? Yeah, they actually call the prophet a madman. At first, Jehu tries to play it cool. He brushes it off, kind of like, oh, you guys know how prophets are. You know what they say. But the men aren't buying it. They insist on the truth. So Jehu just drops the bomb. He tells them, he anointed me king over Israel. And the reaction is just incredible. These hardened military men instantly switch from total skepticism to absolute loyalty. Without missing a beat, they rip off their own cloaks, throw them down on the bare steps to make this makeshift royal carpet, blow the ram's horn, and shout, Jehu is king. Just like that, the entire military allegiance flips. That brings us to Section 2, Jehu's ride and the kings. And let me tell you, the tension ratchets up so fast right here. So Jehu proves right away that he is a brilliant tactician. His very first move? Total lockdown. He tells his men, let absolutely no one slip out of the city to go warn Jezreel. He knows he needs the element of complete surprise. Then he hops into his chariot and just charges toward Jezreel. This sets up an incredibly suspenseful timeline. Over in Jezreel, there's a watchman up on the tower, and he sees this massive dust cloud, Jehu's huge company approaching in the distance. He immediately alerts King Joram. Now, Joram is totally in the dark, so he sends out a guy on horseback to ask, is it peace? But the messenger rides up to Jehu, and he never comes back. So Joram, probably sweating a bit now, sends a second messenger, and guess what? He doesn't come back either. Now, looking right at this source text, we get this amazing, vivid detail. The watchman up on the wall is updating the king. He says, hey, the second guy didn't return either. But then he looks closer at the chariots and makes a very specific identification. He says the driving looks exactly like the driving of Jehu the son of Nimshi. How does he know? Because the guy is driving furiously,
literally like a madman. Jehu's aggressive, full-throttle reputation precedes him before he's even close enough to see his face. And how Jehu handles those messengers is so calculating. Both of Joram's guys ride out and ask the exact same question, is it peace? But Jehu shuts them down instantly. He just snaps back, what do you have to do with peace? Fall in behind me. He essentially just absorbs them into his own ranks. He gives zero information back to King Joram, who is just nervously watching this whole thing unfold from his tower.
Finally, King Joram simply cannot take the suspense anymore. Totally clueless about Jehu's real intentions, both King Joram of Israel and his visitor, King Ahaziah of Judah, make what will be a fatal choice. They order their own chariots hitched up, and they ride out themselves to meet Jehu. And of all the places in the world, they fatefully cross paths with him at one very specific, heavily symbolic location. They meet him right at the plot of ground that belonged to Naboth the Jezreelite.
When Joram finally pulls up face to face with his rogue commander, he asks for peace one last time. Is it peace, Jehu? Jehu's answer is blunt, piercing, and leaves absolutely zero room for misinterpretation. He fires right back, asking how on earth there could be peace as long as the harlotries and witchcrafts of Joram's mother Jezebel are so many. Boom! In that single sentence, the mask is off. Jehu confirms this is a full-blown rebellion driven completely by divine payback for Jezebel's profound sins.
Joram instantly realizes he walked right into a trap. He whips his chariot around, yelling out, "Treachery! Ahaziah!" and desperately tries to flee. But the action is just relentlessly swift. Jehu immediately draws his bow with his full strength. He doesn't hesitate for a second. He shoots an arrow straight at the fleeing king, and it strikes Joram right between the shoulders, piercing directly through his heart. Joram slumps down dead in his chariot on the spot.
Now here is the absolute crucial point we have to catch. The exact, literal fulfillment of prophecy. Jehu turns to his chariot officer Bidkar and orders him to pick up Joram's dead body and throw it right there onto the field of Naboth the Jezreelite. Jehu explicitly reminds his officer about the prophecy the Lord made against Joram's father, Ahab. God had promised payback on this exact plot of stolen land for the innocent blood of Naboth. It comes full circle. Meanwhile, King Ahaziah of Judah sees this going down and hits the gas, trying to escape up the road. Jehu just orders his men to get him too. They chase Ahaziah down and severely wound him in his chariot near Ibleam. He manages to flee as far as Megiddo, but he dies there from his wounds, and his servants have to carry him all the way back to Jerusalem for burial.
Which brings us to Section 3, the fate of Jezebel. It is time to focus on the ultimate target of this entire bloody decree.
So with both kings dead, Jehu rolls straight into the city of Jezreel. By now, Jezebel has heard about everything that's happened. But here's the thing about Jezebel. She doesn't hide. She doesn't cower in a closet. Instead, she gets completely dressed up, she paints her eyes, does her hair, and prepares herself regally, keeping up that imposing royal posture right to the bitter end. As Jehu enters the city gate, she stares right out the window in sheer defiance. She actually shouts this deeply cutting historical insult at him. She calls him Zimri, you murderer of your master. If you know the history, Zimri was an Israelite who assassinated his king, but only managed to rule for 7 days before dying a miserable death himself. She is fiercely mocking Jehu, basically saying, you won't last a week.
But Jehu? He doesn't even take the bait. He doesn't argue with her or trade insults. He just looks up at the high window and shouts, "Who is on my side? Who?" Immediately, 2 or 3 eunuchs, these are her own royal trusted attendants, look down at him. Jehu barks a single command, "Throw her down." He bypasses her entirely and leverages her own staff against her. And they do it without a second thought, which really shows you just how incredibly fast the power dynamics shifted in that palace.
The text here gets incredibly visceral. It is a swift, deeply violent end. The eunuchs literally shove her out the high window. As she hits the pavement, her blood spatters against the wall and all over Jehu's horses. And then Jehu simply drives his horses right over her, trampling her underfoot. Now, the contrast in the very next sentence is almost staggering. Right after this brutal, chaotic execution, Jehu just calmly dusts his hands off, walks inside the palace, and sits down to eat and drink. Totally cold, completely unfazed.
It's literally only after he finishes his meal that Jehu gives a second thought to her body out in the street. He tells his men, "Hey, take care of that cursed woman and bury her, for she was a king's daughter." But when he finally remembers her royal status, he is way too late. His men go out to bury her, but they find almost nothing left, just her skull, her feet, and her hands. The wild city dogs had already devoured the rest of her body. When the men come back and report this, it clicks for Jehu.
He recognizes it instantly. This wasn't an accident. This was the exact, literal fulfillment of the word of the Lord spoken years earlier by the prophet Elijah. Elijah had said that on the plot of ground at Jezreel, dogs would devour Jezebel's flesh, and she would be like refuse on the ground, so no one could even point and say, "This is Jezebel."
All right, let's move to section 4, clarifications and ideas. We really need to ground the key takeaways of what we just witnessed in this fast-paced chapter.
When we look at this explainer purely through the lens of the Peshat, which, remember, means the simple, literal meaning of the text without layering on any hidden or mystical symbolism, we see one massive, undeniable theme. It's the absolute, literal fulfillment of prophetic decrees. Think about it. Elisha's young prophet declared what was going to happen, repeating Elijah's earlier prophecies against Ahab's house. And then, every single location, every single consequence happened exactly as it was plainly stated. Joram died specifically on Naboth's stolen field. Jezebel died at Jezreel and was literally consumed by dogs, word for word what Elijah promised. We don't need any complex metaphors here. The raw, literal text proves that divine words translate into undeniable physical reality.
And that brings us perfectly to Section 5, Lessons and Recap. What practical life lessons can we actually take away from such an intense, heavy narrative?
Well, we learn a very profound lesson about accountability. Historical justice is inescapable, and it is exact. Ahab and Jezebel committed terrible, deeply corrupt crimes, like murdering innocent Naboth just for his vineyard, and shedding the blood of prophets. For years, decades even, it looked to the world like they got away scot-free. But those actions eventually caught up with their entire family tree in one single sweeping day. The lesson? Justice might be delayed for generations, but when it finally arrives, it is incredibly swift. We also see that standing up to deep-rooted corruption requires decisive action. Jehu didn't overthink it. He didn't hesitate to follow through on his directive. To quickly recap our explainer, an unnamed young prophet anoints the army commander, Jehu. This acts as the spark for a lightning-fast rebellion that takes down King Joram, King Ahaziah, and Queen Jezebel, bringing perfectly literal closure to generations of prophecy.
We see here that history has a very long memory, and consequences cannot be outrun forever. It really makes you think, what unresolved actions in our own lives might be waiting for their moment of accountability? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.